Well, continuing on the theme that Venerable Children opened with yesterday, we're still, and probably will be for a long time, bubbling with the energy of the rejoicing from being at the Kalachakra initiation and the teachings with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and in Washington, D.C. There's so many things to share about it. But first of all, I don't think we can say too much how kind people have been in order for us to go. People who could not go themselves made offerings for us to be there, and so really to receive those teachings on their behalf, it was quite inspiring to know that people cared enough to make that happen. And that once we were there, people who made sure that we had plenty to eat, people, were checking in on us all the time. So the kind of care for the sangha was, and the community as a whole, was really very, very beautiful and inspiring. One of the things that we were talking about in the last couple of days is this idea of the sangha being together, the community being very visible as a community. If you're just traveling as one nun down the street, you're just one nun walking down the street. But if you're with 5 or 6, that's a statement. It's like a big billboard for the Dharma. And certainly people recognized, His Holiness as soon as we said, "Oh, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is in town." They were like, "Oh, he's here, he's here." So this inspired the guests, and it also inspired the people who lived in Washington, D.C. And that was very nice to see that they knew who he was, and that they were somehow very touched by his compassion, or whatever it was that they admired in him that inspired them. So people were very open about asking us questions. What are you? Why are you dressed like that? What are you doing here? And their responses were, oh yeah, and taking photos. They wanted to take photos. I don't know how many times we were taken, not individually, some of us, but often big, people wanted the group photo. They would just jump in the photo themselves, didn't even introduce themselves. Can I take a picture here? Click, and they were gone. So it also gave me a bigger sense of what it means to be sangha, not a monastic, but sangha. And although we are not yet 4 fully ordained monastics here, we will be soon. And so that sense of how that becomes a representative of the sangha refuge became much clearer to me. So there's a few quotes that I wanted to share. One, I think she was a police officer when Venerable Simke and I were walking back. We were really tired, and at that moment I wasn't particularly in the mood to have a photo. But she said, "Can I take your picture?" And of course we said yes. And she said, "Well, I've never seen women dressed like this." So of course we brightened right up and said, "Oh yeah, women dress like this too." So that was very nice to be able to offer to her. One of the things that we did in addition to the teachings is that we went to the Holocaust Museum together, and this was a very powerful experience in and of itself. But again, the presence of the Sangha made a statement that as we were getting on the elevator to begin the tour, an older man who had probably, clearly he'd been there for quite a while, and he had some administrative or leadership kind of position, leaned into the elevator door. There were several of us kind of pressed in the back of the elevator, and he just announced, he said, when this museum first opened in 1993, His Holiness the Dalai Lama was the first official guest who made the tour. And he was choked up when he said it. And he said, and that very afternoon then he went and gave a talk at a Christian church, the name of which I don't remember. And he said, "I was so moved by that, I'll never forget it. Thank you so much for coming." So I again felt like here we were representing His Holiness, and so wanting to make sure that we embody that I try to embody the very things that people admire in him. It was very beautiful. Also there at the Holocaust Museum, as we were wandering through, one of the security guards stopped me. I was maybe the 3rd or 4th nun in this stream that had gone down this hall, and she said, "Can I ask you a question? I hope it's not too personal." She said, Can you tell me why you all are dressed this way and what this is about?" And so I told her, I said, "We're Buddhist nuns, and the Dalai Lama is here teaching in Washington, D.C., and that's why we've come." And she said, "Well, I had to ask." She said, "What happened here and that this museum shows? This Holocaust happened because of ignorance. And she said, it is important to me to always ask to understand other people's religions and other people's points of view so that this kind of thing never happens again. So her own personal aspiration was fulfilled by making that request. And I felt like, again, we could participate in creating an environment where this does never happen again as we follow through on His Holiness's, really one of his top 3 agenda items of his whole reason for being, and that is to have interfaith understanding among all kinds of people. So this was a really beautiful experience too. Venerable mentioned yesterday that when we were in the Smithsonian, in an Asian collection of looking at these just unbelievable Buddha images, not just unbelievably artistically beautiful, but very holy, powerful images. Venerable had the idea that we could do our chanting, which we did, which was an experience in itself to be able to stand in front of this, how many hundreds of years old? What do they say, 500? 1,500-year-old stone Buddha images from China, and to be making our chant to Shakyamuni, the foundation fundamental Buddha. At the end of the chanting, which went on about 20 minutes or so, as we walked out, one of the tour guides for the museum had said to Venerable Tenzin Kacho, who was also there watching, she said, "These Buddhas must be so happy. They haven't heard chanting like this in centuries." So again, we got to contribute in so many ways. So as we received so much kindness, we received so much openness. I felt like just by being together, by being the Sangha and kind of embodying to the best of our ability the things that we were coming there to learn from His Holiness, we were able to give back. So there was this beautiful exchange. And I have to say, my experience of the people in Washington, D.C. who work there, who lived there, they are incredibly kind, incredibly sensitive to looking at a stranger on the street and asking if they could help. Or the people at the Verizon Center dealt with a huge crowd and some confusion so gracefully, so happily. So my whole view of our United States government is quite different. Even though there's that nasty stuff happening in Congress, the people that actually make the country run every day, I have a much kinder view just because of their kindness. So for me, that was another lesson in how simple kindness communicates so very much. So finally, I just want to talk about the vigor of His Holiness, because he was very vigorous. He had an enormous schedule. He spoke to all kinds of people, including the President of the United States. And I actually saw on MSNBC a little clip where he told the President that in times like this, the nation's welfare is the top priority, not the priority of any individual party. So he tried to share that with the President, and I hope somebody else was watching the news clip on MSNBC. But he shared, His Holiness shared that in order to get up, come to the Verizon Center, do his practices, do his meetings, and so forth, that he actually got up at 1 o'clock in the morning to begin his practice. Then he did his practice, which I think goes for 4 hours. Then he came to the Verizon Center and did the practices specifically for the Kalachakra. Then he did the afternoon of teaching and inserted the meetings in between, and didn't seem to lose a beat, didn't seem to lose a breath. So this demonstration of what living in an understanding of the nature of reality and an understanding of vast compassion that clearly compels or propels everything that he does. You can see how much energy is generated just from that mind. And so the inspiration to come back to the Abbey and to follow his example as much as I and we possibly can, and to continue to really hold the Dharma in the way that Venerable Chödrön has been teaching us and guiding us to hold it, just inspires me to know that the work we're doing is really important and valuable, And when I get into my little petty mind about my miserable, measly little practice can't be of benefit to anybody, which is just a stupid mind, but it goes there sometimes, to remember some of these experiences and to know that that's not true. It's absolutely not true. And any little bit that any of us does has a vast impact on our world. So, thanks for the opportunity to do this.